Welcome to Climbing Together, the small business experience. I'm Beth Houtrow, founder of Climb the Small Business Book Club, and every episode I talk to a small business owner about a mistake that they've made and what they learned from the experience. Mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible, so let's embrace the mistake. And today we're so excited to welcome Victoria Campbell Osborne to the podcast. Victoria, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name, again, is Victoria Campbell Osborne. I am the owner and founder of the Scented Webb. We are a fragrance and wellness boutique offering niche and luxury perfumes to consumers at a fraction of the cost, in addition to creating custom curated fragrance products like body butter, sugar scrubs, and body oils.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And you are in Kansas City, is that right?
That is right.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. Well, and so, we're here today to talk about mistakes. So share with me a mistake that you made along the way as you've been growing your business.
So as we started our business, one of the biggest mistakes we made was thinking that planning would cover everything. There are some things you simply can't plan for. And so we sell perfume and we sell them in bottles. And so, of course, that was something critical that we needed. We spent weeks looking at all manner of bottles and trying to make that decision, trying to get the best price, planning for delays in shipping, thinking we've done everything we can possibly do. The bottles show up as a box of broken glass. Every bottle broken, destroyed. You plan, but how could you plan for that? How could you plan that everything that's going to come is not going to come? You have a marketing strategy with labels and logos that fit the bottles that are now broken. Unless you want to play Jenga, you have to come up with a new plan for putting those back together, for figuring out how you're going to sell what you now have. And it was an exercise in pivoting. Everyone tells you to be prepared for the pivot. You don't expect a pivot at the start. And so it was an exercise in all of the things we needed to learn. Like, paying for that insurance matters, and having backup bottles and having alternative ways to package your product, and not putting all of your ducks in one bottle became a phrase around the shop. And so that was a hard lesson to learn. It was costly. It was hurtful. It was, literally looking at your dreams broken in a box. And it took a lot to kind of get past that.
And did you order those internationally? Did you have them shipped internationally or from domestically in the U.S.?
Yeah, we originally wanted to buy domestic bottles. And to be candid, we just couldn't afford them as a new startup. So we ordered internationally. Mm-hmm. We got all the guarantees. We paid for the, expedited shipping, put some extra bubbles in there, get it to us fast. And still, it became a scenario where we had to fight with the insurer, fight with the vendor, beg UPS, just a lot of things that, our business plan did not cover. What happens if everything you ordered shows up broken? Yeah. So there's a level of grace you have to extend to yourself.
Yeah, we talk. Yeah. And so talk to me about that. What do you mean by extending grace in this business circumstance?
Yeah, I think we all walk into many enterprises thinking that the experience we have will always serve us in ways that allows us to know. Like you get to a certain age and you're like, well, I should just know that because I'm of a certain age. But you really can't. It's a new enterprise. And in most cases, most of us are doing businesses that while we may have experience with them, we've never run this particular business before. So being kind to yourself and recognizing you're going to be learning as you go, even if you're the most experienced person in the industry, you're going to be figuring things out as you go. And ultimately, sometimes you just have to forgive yourself and say, you know what, I didn't know that. Or I didn't have a way to plan for that. And so now I have to, lick my wounds, pick myself up, dust myself off, and remember why I got into this. And I didn't get into this to get waylaid or defeated by a box of broken glass. So then you move on.
Absolutely. And how did you manage that? Did you find a less fancy bottle locally, or how did you get your product out?
So we actually had been using interim bottles while we were waiting for the dream bottles. So we continued to just use the interim bottles. And while they're not the bottles we envisioned, and they're definitely not the ones I ideally wanted, they literally have been the thing that we've been selling for the entirety of the time that we've been in business. And so
Mm,
obviously they worked. They worked like bottles. They did what they were
yeah.
supposed to do. And while they're not exactly what we had in mind, like when I closed my eyes and saw the pictures, it's not necessarily the ones that I wanted, but it worked. And the other part of that mattered was we ultimately got real clear about how we see things isn't necessarily the way customers see things. My customers were fine with the bottles that I had. While they would have liked the new ones, I'm convinced they would have liked the new ones. They're fine with the ones that we have.
Mm-hmm. I love that note, because so we read a book recently in book club about the most important thing about your customer service and serving your customers is that you find what's most important to them and do that really well. And then the things that aren't as important to them, you don't have to do as well, right? We have things that we think are really important, but if it's not super important to our customers, putting a lot of time and energy into things they don't care about as much costs us money, which costs them money. And then you don't have as much time and energy to devote to the things that they really do value.
Yeah.
So I hope you get the bottles that you love, but I hope also that, that if it turns out that you sell just the same way, that maybe you go back to the original bottles, whatever that vision is for you and your customers. So very
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, here at Climb the Small Business Book Club, we have two tenets. One is about continual learning, and one is about community. And of course, for continual learning, we're a book club. We love books. So, Victoria, tell me about a book that's been very meaningful for you as you've started your entrepreneurial journey.
So a book that was given to me by another entrepreneur is called How to Be Everything. And it was given to me because I was trying to figure out ways to use skills that I had outside of entrepreneurship, how they could be applicable to entrepreneurship. And I was struggling because the skill sets that I have, while helpful, didn't directly align with the business that I now have. And so I was trying to figure out, well, how do I fit in this box? And the book basically talks about us looking at our skills, not in terms of this skill is related to this one thing, but looking at it from a perspective of you can be more than one thing at once. You can be two things at once. You can
Mm-hmm.
address things in ways that maybe utilize your skills not only in a different way, but require you to admit that maybe you need to learn a little bit more in something that you thought you were an expert in. And so it's been a challenge not only to myself as an entrepreneur, but to myself as a person to kind of not be so hard on myself
Mm.
about how I approach business, because I think we all kind of walk into entrepreneurship thinking, hey, I know how to do that. I can do that. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe I got to figure out how to do that. So it's been really helpful.
Oh, I love that. That's very cool. I will add it to my reading list. Always trying to find new books for the book club. So I appreciate that recommendation. And our last question is about building community. So talk to me how you've built a community of entrepreneurs around you in Kansas City and beyond.
One of my favorite things is I've stopped using the word networking and starting using the phrase building community. I believe that as entrepreneurs, we walk a very solo life. People don't often understand the mission and vision we have around our businesses, and it's hard to make time to connect with others who do because we're so busy trying to build our businesses. And so rather than calling it
Yes.
networking, I called it building community. I go to events that are of like-minded people who believe in entrepreneurship and small business. But instead of looking at it as a thing of, I'm trying to meet this person and get their business card and talk to them later or maybe have coffee, I spend it as an exercise in, well, what can we do to support each other in ways that help us both as business people? So sometimes that may not mean us working together. That might mean me saying, hey, John, I know this lady named Beth, and I think the two of you would really work together well. It's kind of counterintuitive because you're basically sowing seeds into gardens that you may not see. And I think
Mhm.
networking, regrettably, and building that community, often people want immediate results. Like, I'm doing this so that I can get that. And sometimes it's not that. What ultimately happens is John remembers I told him about Beth. And then John comes back to me and
Mhm.
says, that was such a really great introduction that you gave me. When I was thinking about it, I thought of somebody I thought you need to meet. And that's how it kind of manifests. So build community, not
Absolutely.
networks.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. And that is really such a big part of what we share and talk about is our community is not about like, I do this for you, you do this for me,
Right,
transactional kind of
right,
thing,
right.
right? It's building real relationships and finding opportunities to support each other because we value each other and care about each
Yeah.
other and respect each other, as opposed to I'll get this much money if you get this much money
It is,
kind of
it is,
moment.
it
So
is, it is the way of the group chat. Like, I love my entrepreneurial group chat because it's a place, it's a watering hole. It's a place to complain. It's a place to talk about bottles. It's a place to be like, oh my God, this vendor, this customer, I'm so tired. It's literally not necessarily building anything into your business, but allowing you to build opportunity for people to give you suggestions, for people to just tell you to keep
mhm.
going, for people to tell you you're doing the right thing, or, hey, I saw your sign on the side of the highway and it was so great. I was so excited for you. The
Yeah.
community matters.
Well, it's just the emotional well-being of being around other people who understand what you're going through.
Yes.
I was just talking in the podcast with someone who was disappointed that her friends and family didn't support her as much as she thought she
Yeah.
would. And I was like, they don't get it.
Yeah.
It's not personal. They just don't understand what you're going through and what you're trying to do because they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, yeah, you got to find that extra, that entrepreneur family,
Yes.
right, to
Yes.
help support you through the way.
Definitely.
Well, very cool. Victoria, this has been a delight. And that's the podcast though. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
me.
so much for having me. You all have a great week.
This podcast is brought to you by Climb the Small Business Book Club, where entrepreneurs go to learn, discuss, apply, and grow. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram at Climb Book Club. And always remember, mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible. So let's embrace the mistake.